Ciao mondo, hello world, hola mundo, hello monde. I'm here today in San Diego at the AKI and CRRT meeting, and I have the opportunity to discuss with my friend here what are the options that have appeared in the field of critical care nephrology and what are the take-home messages. So I hope through the short interview you will have a kind of a summary of this meeting, waiting, of course, for the Vicenza course, which will take place in May in Italy in few months from now. So let's move on and see what the questions you have for me.
Absolutely. Enjoy the interview.
Thank you.
Cheers. It doesn't get better than that. Hello everyone, we're here at the wonderful AKI CRRT 2020 conference in beautiful San Diego, and we have the luxury and honor to join with Dr. Claudio Ronco from Italy, from Vicenza. And of course, I'm a big fan of his Cappuccino with Claudio, so I said we have to do it, so here we are. So Dr. Ronco, thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
So Dr. Ronco, tell me, one question I hear from a lot of people is, how did you get your start in medicine? What made you interested in going to nephrology?
Well, I wanted to do cardiology, and I could not make it for different reasons, so I had to go to a specialty in nephrology. Then I went to the hospital. I wanted to do cardiology, and there was only a spot in nephrology. And then finally I decided that nephrology was the career I needed to do. But I still am author of the main paper on cardio-renal syndrome.
Wonderful, fantastic, and the world is much better off having you go into nephrology. Now, between you and Dr. Kellum, you guys authored some of the most groundbreaking and important pieces of critical care nephrology. What are some things that you're seeing at this meeting that have gotten you excited and very interested?
Well, this meeting is the 25th anniversary of the AKI CRRT conference in San Diego. Don't forget that this year we're going to have the 38th conference in Vicenza.
Which I heard is a wonderful conference.
Yeah, we started in 1982, and at that time we really wanted to melt the knowledge between intensive care and nephrology. And I think that the heritage of this pioneering idea is today really taking place in this meeting and other meetings where intensivists and nephrologists and cardiologists get together. In this meeting, there are several different topics. I think the most striking was the session on the past, the present, and the future of AKI and CRRT. Because I'm old, they asked me to do the past, but I think I'm interested as well on the present, that somehow is the result of the past, and the future, which we'll design.
Very interesting. And by the way, before we talk about the present, we have to cheers about it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cheers.
Excellent.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. So, what are specifically some topics, exciting topics that are happening now in the present in the world of AKI and CRRT?
Well, in the area of AKI, I think we have been able, especially through the messages of the Acute Disease Quality Initiative group, to set up an agenda for research and definitions in the diagnosis of AKI, staging of AKI, use of biomarkers, use of different technologies that can help in the diagnosis and the monitoring of AKI. And finally, new indications for extracorporeal therapies, the use of extracorporeal therapies for different organ support, the use in sepsis, and many other results from interesting randomized trial, including the recent START trial that will tell us when to start the renal replacement therapy in patients with AKI.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of what are some more controversial topics, the thing about these conferences, you bring some of the world, the thought leaders in the space together. There's always going to be some interesting topics that are more controversial. Anything controversial that is being discussed?
Well, controversy is mostly arising from lack of evidence or specific evidence in some areas. For example, controversy is on the opportunity to use biomarkers, for example, because they are more expensive than creatinine. And however, there is evidence enough, especially according to many people, including us, that results are justifying the increased cost for this, because they can save money for having less patients with AKI. Mm-hmm. Then another controversial area is again when to start CRRT in these patients. Another controversy is related to can we use extracorporeal therapies in sepsis and what should be the modality?
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about sepsis as it relates to AKI.
Of course.
Do you feel like that's becoming more of a trend, that these two black box syndromes are starting to merge together in a way?
Well, absolutely. It's a kind of a common final pathway. The fact that patient has organ dysfunction and need to be treated. I recently published in Lancet Respiratory Medicine a call for action, especially for the recent coronavirus infection epidemic, that patient may end up with a cytokine storm, and they may need adsorption or other techniques to remove cytokines from the circulation in order to mitigate the organ damage.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And it seems like that's a trend in medicine, which is understanding these cytokine storms, which cause many issues with multi-organs, and using various technologies. So what technologies do you use to sort of combat this cytokine storm, whether it's sepsis or something like coronavirus?
We are big fan of a concept that we described recently, which is there is a cascade from the viral bacterial invasion to the development of circulating cytokine, and then presence of organ damage, in which you can have a sequential extracorporeal therapy. At the beginning, you can try to remove endotoxin, for example. Then, in a subsequent step, you try to remove cytokines. And in the third step, you try to support organ failure. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we use polymyxin B, hemofiltration, hemoperfusion in patients with high circulating level of endotoxin. Then we use sorbent cartridges to remove cytokines or specific membranes that absorb cytokines in the intermediate phase. And finally, we use continuous renal replacement therapy, but also liver support, lung support with CO2 removal, and liver support, what we call today ECOS, extracorporeal organ support.
Interesting. Now, one thing that you're really well known for, and is quite a contribution to the field of nephrology, is this concept around a renal functional reserve. How does that relate to this?
Renal functional reserve is an important concept because patients who have a normal kidney function, or we think they have a normal kidney function because they have baseline GFR, which is close to normal or normal, not necessarily have still the renal functional reserve that is normally present in an healthy subject. So if for any reason previous acute kidney injury episodes, subclinical AKI or something like this, they have lost part of the functioning nephron mass. They may still have a normal baseline GFR, but they may have lost part of the renal functional reserve, and therefore they are more exposed to insults and development of AKI.
Interesting. And moving forward, with all these new technologies and of course new biomarkers, and I think some old biomarkers, like for example urine output, that nephrologists are now having in their toolbox to use. What is the critical care nephrologist of the future going to look like? What kind of techniques and technologies do they use? Well,
urine output has always been something that has been defined as difficult to acquire as information in the ICU. We mostly look at retrospective urine output measurement, but having minute-by-minute urine output measurement can actually help us to understand when there is a critical point in which patient may require intervention. I think that in this area we will need to have artificial intelligence to help us to create algorithms that identify false positive from significant patterns that actually identify patients that very likely will undergo acute kidney injury and further reduction of urine output in the hours to follow.
Interesting. And you know, there was an interesting talk, I think Azar Bjorts gave it or someone else, on the gender differences when you look at sepsis patients. Do you think that using something like AI will help eliminate certain biases and so that the physicians can segment but also better tailor treatment to patients?
The genotyping together with the phenotyping of the patient will be the key in the future, as we did in cancer and other areas, to better treat our patients and to get them the proper therapy.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, you know, again, we want to be very respectful of your time. In sort of wrapping things up, would you like to, you know, give us a few takeaways for the audience to go home with?
Well, first of all, I think we need to continue our campaign, our awareness and alertness for AKI, to say that this is a deadly situation, kills patients, and we need to be extremely careful in possibly make an early diagnosis and to install preventive protective measures for the kidney. The second thing is that there is sepsis together with heart failure that represent a high percent of patients that may be at risk of AKI, so we should collaborate with nearby disciplines in order to get a comprehensive approach to the patient. And the third one is that technology can help us in several steps, from the initial diagnosis, then to the staging of the AKI and organ failure, finally deciding when specific interventions are suggested and indicated, and then helping in prescribing the right therapy, and finally monitoring the therapy in the sense that we can have a dynamic approach to the patient and go back to prescription and change in case our results are not what we expect.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap up. So this was Cappuccino with Claudio, finally. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And it was
Thank you
fantastic.
very much.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much for joining today, Cappuccino.
Absolutely. Cheers.